find our dad and kill Nazis.
So you girls are sisters.
Twin sisters.
He came here looking for something, and suddenly he was gone.
We can do this, Jess.
That you lack the strength.
You could have flaked out on me?
Hell no.
But they fear the blood running through your veins. The blood of Blazkowicz.
What's going on, everyone? Great Talon here, and today the prey is going to be my Wolfenstein Youngblood review. So let us return to that castle von Wolfenstein in an all-new spin-off, to the semi-sequel or expansion pack, rather, if you so be it, where we play as the two offspring daughters of Butcher Billy, also known as BJ Blazkowicz. In this run-and-gun action first-person shooter with a twist this time, being that the entire game begs to be played with a buddy in online co-op mode. What we will dissect today and explore in my review is going to be the pros and cons, the ups and downs, both revolving around centric core first-person shooter enjoyable experience that I had, mixed with somewhat that is hindered by the presence of obligatory 2019 surprise mechanics. And if you don't know what I mean by that, well, I mean, nothing other than microtransactions. Ugh, the dreaded microtransactions. So let's dive right in and start our review, shall we? Okay, so graphics as always are up first. So I was playing this game in its entirety on my PlayStation 4 Pro, and most of the time the game was hitting close to 60 frames per second, which I felt great during most of the high octane and fast-paced action sequences. The graphics, while not featuring an HDR option, looked pretty good for the most part, with some really nicely rendered character models in and out of the cutscenes. I rarely ran into any types of performance issues, although a buddy of mine that I was playing through the game with had his game crash a couple of times and the app crashed when trying to connect to my game in an online co-op multiplayer session. I ran into connection issues sometimes, whether it be trying to play with my friend online or, but those can be chalked up to a number of various reasons or anomalies, such as Wi-Fi router issues to Bethesda servers, even Sony's PlayStation Network being wonky at the time. So I really can't target a source for some minor connection issues, but I experienced in my few days of playing so far. But other than that, the environments are somewhat stunning to behold, as the game takes you to various parts of Nazi-occupied Paris, France. And there's a good sense of verticality here. And some panned out landscapes from rooftops to skyscrapers and even zeppelins, thanks to the game being co-developed by Arcane Studios, the developers responsible for the Dishonored series, and the recently rebooted Prey franchise. And lastly, whether it be from assault rifles to shotguns to electric arc rifles or laser frickin' beams from straight out of a James Bond movie, the guns ablazing here remain satisfying to witness and behold in their souped up and Nazi-engineered glory. Okay, so now a bit about the gameplay and the control. So Wolfenstein Youngblood is at its finest, is a fast-paced run-and-gun first-person shooter with some mild puzzle-solving elements from time to time. In between running down hordes and waves of Nazi assholes, you will be tasked with finding floppy disks to use on computer terminals to unlock access codes for doors or search broad areas for clues on how to progress by finding hidden passageways or levers to unlock a path forward. It may sound like it is unevenly paced, but it actually honestly complements the action nicely and gives you your time for your adrenaline glands to simmer down in between the intense action segments of the game. Also, there are moments quite often where you have to find alternative entrances to areas where your objectives are present by thinking outside of the box, which is what I found was kind of cool, meaning you had to either say keep looking for vents or scaffolding to climb in order to find alternate entrances, and this of course is always thanks to Arcane Studios, who are providing that sense of depth and scaling to the vertically platforming that it's known for. And when in doubt, in Wolfenstein Youngblood, if you don't know where to go and you can't access an area, just look up. That is the answer to everything in Arcane Studios games. Just look up and you will find the answer. It's above you. However, with that being said, it doesn't always work in its favor, seeing though platforming in any first-person shooter game can be a bit wonky at times, especially since you are constantly looking through the lens of the character you're playing as, not being able to see what grip points are or your feet or just get all lined up with your equilibrium rather at a time your jumps. The only first-person shooter I think that nearly nailed platforming or came close in the first-person perspective was Mirror's Edge. And unfortunately, Wolfenstein Youngblood didn't nail the first-person shooter platforming here, the first-person platforming rather, as I kept finding myself falling or not landing on platforms when trying to scale them, when I had to get up on like another piece of platform or landscape. Found myself getting a little annoyed, a little aggravated when I kept having to retry. In regards to the characters, you get to either choose to play as one of the daughters of B.J. Blazkowicz, the legend himself, Jess or Soph. Jess has the dark hair and Soph is the blonde, neither of which matters in terms of performance, as the selection is purely cosmetic. It's a cosmetic choice. Although you do start off with a different perk depending on which daughter you actually choose. Honestly, you can, Soph has, the blonde has a stealth perk which allows her to go invisible for a short period of time, and Jess has a crush ability, what it's called, which allows you to ram and drop kick your opponents and knock them off of balance until they fall to the ground. With that being said, both of these perks can be purchased later on in the character upgrade menu. And speaking of the character upgrade menu, there are a decent amount of upgrades to choose from. And you can unlock these upgrades by using skill points acquired by completing missions or leveling up. The upgrades range from obtaining more HP armor to beefing up your character by providing more throwables or more grenades and throwing items. Some upgrades will actually allow you to dual wield weapons or carry temporary disposable BFGs, like big fucking guns that enemy NPCs carry around that you can for a short period of time as well. I found that most of the upgrades were actually useful, and the progression and leveling up system was at a decent pace, but I couldn't help but feel that they were kind of tacked on to provide an RPG-like feel that came up short, to be honest, on the short side. And there was most of the more useful upgrades can be unlocked rather early on in the game, which actually includes many of the gun upgrade perks, which are purchased with silver coins, which are found scattered throughout the game as well. And here's where we begin to come to the negative aspects of this game, which has hindered the score greatly. Greatly for me. Why, oh why, with a decently paced and mildly rewarding upgrade system that dishes out a fair amount of experience and in-game currency, why is there a Bethesda storefront plastered in the main menu, which allows you to buy fucking gold bars, to buy XP boosters, or time savers to speed up the process? Why? Well, I have the answer, folks. It is because it's 2019, that's why. And without obligatory surprise mechanics in AAA games, we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. Besides the presence of these vampiric microtransactions, which are really almost warranted never to be used as there is no damn need for them, the game somewhat suffers from tedious, repetitive side missions that I like to call filler missions, to level up your character enough to tackle the next story mission and or raid. Yes, I said raid, as in like a raid, like going to play Destiny and doing a raid, or Anthem and doing a raid, where you have to take on a multi-tiered mission. And if you fail or run out of lives during this prolonged mission, you have to, and yes, you get shared lives in the game. You get 3. You can stack up to 3 shared lives. So in other words, if both of you go down, you just, you could use a life to revive yourselves. If you run out of those lives during a raid, you have to do the entire raid from the start. In the beginning, it actually happened to me and my friend. You had to do the raid all over again, and I was pissed. We were at the tail end of the raid, and we had to do it from the start, and it really pissed me off. Now here it is. I want to say that Wolfenstein, it seems that Wolfenstein Youngblood is in a weird place. For starters, it seems to like it wants to be the soft sequel to Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, which is fine. And on the other hand, it ends up turning itself into another live service type of game like Destiny or Anthem, which I guess is fine for some out there who don't mind, but I kind of mind a little bit, especially if you're playing the game. But you know what though? If you're playing the game in co-op mode with the buddy, it adds a little bit to the fun factor, I will say that. But if you plan on playing this game solo while the AI does a crapshoot of a job trying to help you in battle, it just honestly gets boring and tedious over time as you keep doing the same monotonous missions over and over again in order to level up to progress in the main story missions and or raids. Most of the jobber quests, as I like to call them, or the fetch quests, or all they ask you to do is just find switches or key cards or off dead bodies or find dead soldiers and report back to base. Even some of the story mission raids get repetitive. Of most of the infiltrate base missions, all you do is you infiltrate said base, dispose of a mini big rig robot thing, and then unlock a mechanism, find out more intel to see where you need to go next, and that's it. I mean, it's fine, I guess, if you don't mind the level of redundancy present within the core of this game. The game also plops you into a controlled semi-open map, I guess, scattered around Paris, different segments of different partly open maps, which you can fast travel by the use of metro stations, and actually take you to like Zeppelins or whatever different parts of the map. That, you know, it's really cool to scour at first, but after 10 to 15 missions that repeat within those same confined areas will begin to become quite fatigued as time goes on. Besides using metro maps to fast travel, you can also have the ability to fast travel back to base if there are no enemies on screen by holding down the square button on the PS4 or the X button on the Xbox, which is no easy feat, as enemies respawn almost as fast as you take them down, which is more than annoying at times as well. If you just try and have one enemy left and it's stuck on the map and it's just flashing orange in the corner there, and you're just trying to get out and you can't fast travel out even if you get back to a metro map, so if one fucking enemy is killed who's probably just run into a goddamn wall somewhere and just stuck in a loop, that's a little annoying. That happened to me several times where I almost had to quit the game and reload my save just so I could get back to home base, which is in the catacombs, which is your hub area. Yeah, that was a little frustrating as well. But I do believe, like, honestly, like, there has to be a patch down the line for that whole, like, you know, you got to kill all the enemies before you can fast travel back to home base. It just honestly felt like this game was yet again another game rushed out by AAA greedy corporations that if it was given enough more time and polish, the gameplay experience could have felt better than what we got. Control-wise, on the other hand, besides uneven platforming sessions, because it's hindered by design flaw, that is having a platforming and a first-person game, I found that the shooting on-foot controls were really tight and responsive overall. And that's about it for gameplay. Moving on to the story and narrative section now. Okay, so now about the story and the narrative and the campaign. The story picks up 19 years after the events of Wolfenstein 2, and the setting is 1980 Paris, and you play as the twin daughters of B.J. Blazkowicz, Jessa and Soph, as they go on a quest to find their missing father in Nazi-occupied Paris, with some returning familiar faces and some new ones as well. The game is a bit light on the story, though, and more heavy emphasis on the gameplay. But when story parts are present, they usually take place in the beginning, where you get about 7 or 8 minute prologue cutscene. Then about halfway through the story, you had another turning point scene, which is about 5-7 minutes. Then finally, in the end game, there was about a 10-minute end game epilogue. The story itself is told well enough during these segments, and honestly, is a simple task and journey with two new likable protagonists who are a little as weird as they are quirky, and just what the doctor ordered for Wolfenstein's dark and twisted sense of humor.
Nice to each other.
What? It's a compliment.
Shut up.
Our girls are young women now. When did that happen? What's the matter, darling?
Gotta get out of the rain.
Keine Bewegung! Was hast du noch bereit?
So the sound, music, and voice. The gunplay sound effects are on point as always, courtesy of developer Machine Games, and the music feels like it was ripped out of a bizarre pseudo-80s techno alternate dimension or alternate universe, especially during the elevator moments where you can watch the twins dance or poke fun at each other. The voice acting, when present, is just as good as you would expect it from a Wolfenstein game. While it won't win any awards or be as entertaining as the previous Wolfenstein titles were, I found myself enjoying the dialogue and character interaction as it played out on screen, and Jess and Soap pumping each other up on the battlefield by pepping each other up saying, "You're a badass," or "Get some," made me feel like I was playing as the daughters of Sir Duke Nukem at times, and they actually had really good chemistry together, which I appreciated. Now on to the replay value. It's going to be moderate here for me. Wolfenstein Youngblood did not feel like I needed to go back and finish it after I played the story, in part thanks to its repetitive and tedious side missions, and not to mention its daily fetch quests. This is why I stopped playing games like Destiny, because when a game becomes feels like a chore and a second job, it's time to move on, in my opinion, to greener pastures, and that is what this game was and was trying to convey for the most part. And I felt that, hey, if that's your cup of tea, then by all means, lock and load and go load yourselves up with it. The story, once you make it to the end after leveling up your character enough, you have to be at least, I think, level 35 to finish the story, without much hassle. You're looking at approximately 15 to 20 hours, possibly more, if you keep playing past the post game, and some completionists out there and trophy hunters, achievement hunters can squeeze up almost 40 hours out of this one for sure. Now, in regards to the overall score, is it worth your time? I'm going to have to go with the 7 out of 10 here. At its finest, Wolfenstein Youngblood is a decent first-person shooter game with co-op element that adds more of a fun factor rather than soldiering it through alone. In the honeymoon phase of the game, I would honestly have scored this an 8. Easily, but as time went on and its luster began to wear off, I found myself a bit bored with the tedium, monotony, and found myself in a bit of a rut by the game's end, and was almost glad it was over, because if I had to do another frickin' fetch quest or side mission to find a fucking passcode for the 90th time, to decode a nearby terminal for the 100th time, I would have probably sold this game on the spot and put a bullet in my head. Overall, though, I would say it is only worth your time if you have a buddy or a friend to play with, or if you can find a good person to play with on the interwebs to fight alongside you. It adds more joy and amusement to the game. If you prefer playing solo, I don't think you'll have a good time with this one, unfortunately. But that's just my opinion. Either way, the base price is only $30, $29.99. And considering you get a minimum of at least a dozen or more hours out of the game, even if you try and speed run it, you can get done within like 8 hours or less. But hey, that's a pretty fair price if you ask me for potentially considered a AAA title. Other than the repetition, the direction of a live service model that they were trying to convey to go with here that just feels out of place overall. And I would much rather the next installment in the franchise be the Wolfenstein 3, where they excel. And as the way this game ended, I guess spoiler alert, it kind of ended open, so you can kind of have another Wolfenstein game. I really hope it's the third one with BJ coming back into the helm. That would be awesome. But anyway, that's my review of Wolfenstein Youngblood. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Drop a like and a sub. I really appreciate your time, as always, stopping by. That being said, thank you again, and you guys have a great day. Catch you on the next one.